January 21, 2026. One signature ends a decade of assumptions. Atlas Oil loses its offshore license in Senegal. No sirens. No arrests. No cameras. A minister signs. Billions vanish from balance sheets. The public story says regulation. The paperwork says non-compliance. The timing says something else. This investigation begins with what is known, not what is rumored. The license existed. The revocation is real. The reasons are listed. Financial guarantees judged inadequate. Drilling not commenced. Milestones missed. Each item appears lawful. Each item existed before. 4 years. Renewals followed warnings. Extensions followed delays. Nothing changed in the file. The date changed. Atlas Oil operated within a regional norm. Exploration licenses often sit idle. Capital waits. Partners negotiate. Markets move. Regulators tolerate delays. They always have. Until they do not. Selective enforcement is not illegal. It is simply powerful. Here is the first hinge. The decision lands as Nigeria's most sensitive political case turns international. Courts admit error. Oversight bodies confirm misconduct. Lawyers escalate. Pressure rises. Silence thickens. Then a license falls, far from Abuja, close enough to matter. We will separate facts from hypotheses. Fact, the revocation occurred on January 21st. Fact, Atlas had prior extensions. Fact, comparable operators were not terminated. Hypothesis, risk flags changed. Hypothesis, associations became liabilities. Hypothesis, enforcement became a message. Names matter. Atlas Oil matters. Senegal matters. And a name absent from documents yet present in conversations matters, Nnamdi Kanu. He appears nowhere on filings. He appears everywhere in whispers. We will not claim ownership. We will trace incentives. We will follow timing. We will examine who benefits, who loses, and who goes quiet. If business hurts like a verdict, stop calling it business. Call it a signal. Call it a test. This chapter establishes the ground truth. The next chapter maps the people who stood on it. Read carefully, because every omission will matter when the pattern sharpens next. The signal introduced in Chapter 1 requires names, because signals do not travel without carriers. Start with the office that converts discretion into consequence. The governor of Imo State sits at the intersection of approvals and access. Public income is modest. Private outcomes are not. Asset growth outpaces salary by orders of magnitude. That gap does not prove illegality. It proves leverage. In West African energy, leverage decides who waits and who proceeds. Next, the operator. Arthur Ease is not merely a shareholder. He is a broker of alignment. His value is not measured by reserves alone, but by reach capital here, counsel there, a call that moves a calendar. Complex ownership is standard. Layered vehicles are normal. Silence is customary. What is unusual is timing. A long-held license enters review after years of tolerance, then collapses with finality. Now the absent presence. Nnamdi Kanu appears nowhere on cap tables, nowhere in filings, nowhere in ministerial memos. Yet his case reshapes risk across borders. When a prosecution draws international scrutiny, associations harden into hazards. Not because they are illegal, but because they are costly. Here the mechanics matter. Regulators do not need proof of wrongdoing to reassess exposure. They need justification. Administrative thresholds provide it. Missed milestones. Deferred drilling. Taper guarantees deemed insufficient. These existed before. They mattered later. The switch is not the rule, it is the appetite to enforce it. Consider the incentives. Senegal signals seriousness to partners and lenders by tightening. Nigeria reduces noise by discouraging visible support networks. Operators recalibrate. Investors retreat. Nobody announces coordination. Nobody must. Risk travels faster than instructions. We will not allege a conspiracy. We will document convergence. Three names occupy different planes: office, capital, incarceration, yet their timelines converge. One speaks rarely. One moves quietly. One cannot speak at all. The effect is asymmetric. Pressure accumulates where defenses are thinnest. Building on the axis mapped in Chapter 2, the next step is verification. Strip the story of inference and read the file as the regulator wants it read. The revocation notice lists 3 grounds. Each appears routine. Each, on inspection, raises the same question: why now? Ground 1 cites inadequate financial guarantees. This is accurate in form, incomplete in context. The guarantees did not fail on January 21st. They predated it. Internal correspondence shows the same concerns logged years earlier, followed by renewals. The standard remedy is adjustment, not annihilation. When a condition persists through extensions, it becomes tolerated risk. Tolerated risk does not suddenly become fatal without a trigger. Ground 2 cites failure to commence drilling. Also accurate. Also common. Exploration licenses across West Africa often sit dormant while operators assemble financing, negotiate partners, or wait for market signals. Regulators know this. They design milestones to be flexible. Enforcement escalates gradually. It did not escalate here. It ended. Ground 3 cites missed operational milestones. The phrase sounds severe. In practice it often means filings, dates, documentation, deficiencies cured by notices or fines. Termination is the maximum penalty. Maximum penalties are rare. They are rarer still when the same deficiencies were previously waived. Place these grounds against comparators. In Senegal, multiple license holders carried similar deficiencies without revocation. Some for longer. Some with fewer investments on record. Selectivity does not require malice. It requires discretion. Discretion exists. What the file does not contain matters as much as what it contains. There is no emergency finding. No safety breach. No environmental incident. No fraud charge. No change in statute. No new ministerial directive. The administration is the same. The law is the same. The facts are the same. Only the outcome changed. This is the hinge where lawful explanations thin. If rules did not change, enforcement intent did. That intent may be policy-driven. It may be reputational. It may be risk-averse. Our task is not to accuse, it is to align cause with effect. If Chapter 3 thins the official explanation, Chapter 4 tests a hypothesis that fits the timing without inventing new facts. The premise is narrow. When political risk rises, regulators reassess exposure. Not because law changed, but because cost did. This is not an accusation of orders or coordination. It is an observation about incentives. In West African energy, licenses sit at the crossroads of capital markets, diplomacy, and reputational risk. When a prosecution becomes internationally scrutinized, associations, even distant ones, become liabilities. Compliance thresholds that once sufficed no longer do. Apply that logic to the file. Atlas Oil carried known deficiencies for years and received renewals. Then scrutiny elsewhere intensified. Oversight admissions surfaced. Appeals escalated. Media attention widened. In that environment, tolerance contracts. Discretion hardens. The maximum remedy becomes attractive because it is clean, defensible, and final. Notice what the hypothesis does not require. It does not require proof of ownership links. It does not require a directive. It requires only that risk managers decide uncertainty is unacceptable. The law supplies the lever, timing supplies the force. This also explains silence. When outcomes are lawful on paper, explanations invite scrutiny without benefit. A short notice closes the matter. Investors infer the rest. Markets adjust. The signal travels. Crucially, this hypothesis predicts selectivity. Comparable operators persist. A single license is terminated decisively. The message is not about drilling. It is about exposure. Exposure to controversy. Exposure to pressure. Exposure to names that concentrate attention. This framework also predicts collateral effects. Capital retreats preemptively. Partners delay. Accounts undergo review. None of this requires a memo. Risk aversion does the work. We proceed with caution. Hypotheses must earn credibility by explaining more with less. This one explains timing, selectivity, and silence without adding actors. Chapter 5 examines how law becomes the instrument, neutral in text, precise in application when discretion is activated. The mechanism is familiar. Law is written broadly. Enforcement is discretionary. Discretion, applied unevenly, produces outcomes that feel targeted without naming targets. In energy regulation, milestones are flexible by design. They manage uncertainty. When tolerance exists, deadlines slide. When tolerance ends, deadlines bite. Both outcomes are lawful. Only one is predictable. Consider comparators again. Operators with similar debts continued under remedial plans. Atlas did not. The difference need not be misconduct. It can be priority. Enforcement concentrates where scrutiny concentrates. This is not unique to one jurisdiction. It is a feature of regulatory systems under pressure. The fastest way to demonstrate seriousness is to act decisively in one high-visibility case. The legal basis must be clean. The optics must be controlled. The action must be defensible. Revocation satisfies all three. Selective enforcement also minimizes appeals risk. Administrative records already contain deficiencies. Courts defer to regulators on technical judgments. The operator bears the burden. Time favors the state. The analogy is simple. A speed limit exists. Everyone exceeds it. Enforcement begins when traffic becomes a problem. Tickets appear lawful. Drivers feel singled out. Both are true. This chapter matters because it reframes intent. The question is not whether Atlas violated terms. It is whether those violations explain the timing and severity. On that measure, the file is thin. Chapter 6 follows the consequences. Not for institutions, but for people, those who absorb loss without voice, and those who adjust behavior when the signal is received. Revocation is not abstract. It destroys projected revenue, reorders portfolios, and collapses leverage built over years. Atlas loses a 15-year runway. Partners reprice risk. Capital flees. Arthur Ease loses positioning. Influence without assets weakens. Negotiations stall. The cost is not a headline number, it is time. Yet the most constrained actor is the one without access. Nnamdi Kanu cannot speak to markets, clarify associations, or distance supporters. His silence is enforced. In risk terms, enforced silence is contagious. Those near it withdraw. This is how signals work. One decisive action alters incentives across a network. Others infer danger and disengage. Support dries up without instruction. No arrests are required. No bans are announced. The outcome is the same. Families feel it first. Legal defenses narrow. Assistance thins. The cost of proximity rises. This is not punishment by statute. It is pressure by consequence. We note again what is not claimed. No document states motive. No official cites politics. The system does not need to. It relies on anticipation. Chapter 7 aggregates these effects into pattern. One case explains little. Repetition explains more. Patterns are built from intervals and outcomes. First, scrutiny intensifies in one domain. Next, tolerance contracts in another. Then, decisive enforcement lands where visibility is highest. Afterward, silence. Track the intervals. Oversight admissions emerge. Appeals escalate. International attention increases. Within weeks, audits appear. Within months, a license ends. The cadence repeats. Track the outcomes. Not universal crackdowns. Targeted actions. Not new laws. Old rules applied decisively. Not explanations. Notices. Critically, the pattern predicts restraint. Broad repression would provoke backlash. Selective enforcement avoids it. The law remains intact. The signal is clear. This does not require coordination. It requires alignment of incentives across risk managers. When exposure rises, tolerance falls. Each actor acts locally. The aggregate effect looks strategic. We test alternative explanations. Market shock? Absent. Statutory change? None. Administrative overhaul? No. Emergency? No. The pattern survives these tests. The conclusion here is not certainty. It is probability. When coincidence stacks, explanation must carry weight. This one does. The final chapter returns judgment to the viewer. Not a verdict, but a choice between explanations and the costs of each. Two explanations remain. The first says this was routine enforcement. The second says this was enforcement shaped by risk. The first struggles with timing, selectivity, and silence. The second explains all three without alleging orders or naming culprits. It treats law as the instrument and discretion as the driver. Facts are fixed. A license was revoked on January 21st. Deficiencies existed earlier. Comparators persisted. Oversight elsewhere intensified. Associations became costly. Silence followed. Hypotheses must be labeled. Political motive is not proven. It is inferred from alignment. If you reject inference, accept coincidence. If you reject coincidence, accept inference. Choose one. What cannot be denied is effect. Capital withdrew. Networks recalibrated. Support chilled. The message traveled without words. This investigation does not ask you to believe whispers. It asks you to weigh explanations. Which one explains more with less? Engage if you think scrutiny should be even. Engage if you think discretion deserves daylight. Engagement does not prove motive. It forces accountability. The record will persist. Notices will age. Patterns will repeat or break. If they repeat, inference strengthens. If they break, coincidence regains ground. Until then, the safest claim is this: when law is neutral and outcomes are not, attention belongs not only on rules, but on when and where they are applied.